Ashley sat at her kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night with divorce papers spread out in front of her, a pen in her hand, and two sleeping children upstairs who had no idea their entire world was about to change forever. She had rehearsed this moment for months. The conversation, the explanation she'd give her kids, the apartment she'd already looked at online. 17 years of marriage, and it had come down to this: a stack of papers on a kitchen table and a husband upstairs who had, in her mind, checked out of their family a long time ago. She picked up the pen, hand shaking, ready to sign the first page, and then she heard something she wasn't expecting. Footsteps on the stairs, slow, heavy, hesitant footsteps that stopped just outside the kitchen doorway. She looked up and saw her husband, Daniel, standing there in the dim light, tears streaming down a face she hadn't seen cry in years, holding his own Bible against his chest like it was the only thing keeping him upright. What happened over the next several hours, in that kitchen, changed the entire trajectory of their family. This is Ashley and Daniel's story. Daniel and Ashley had been high school sweethearts, married young, building a life together that from the outside looked like exactly the kind of family everyone hopes for. 2 kids, a modest home, church every Sunday morning in their early years. But somewhere over the course of nearly 2 decades, the weight of ordinary life had slowly worn away at the foundation neither of them had ever thought to protect carefully enough. Daniel had thrown himself entirely into work, chasing a promotion he believed would finally give his family the security he felt responsible for providing. But the long hours became longer. The weekends at the office became more frequent. He told himself it was temporary, that he'd pull back once things settled, but things never settled. And somewhere along the way, he had become a stranger in his own home, present at the dinner table but mentally somewhere else entirely, distracted, short-tempered, disconnected from the wife and children who needed him. Ashley had tried for years to reach him, to pull him back toward the family he seemed to be drifting away from. She'd asked him to go to counseling. He'd refused, insisting things were fine, that he was simply tired, that this was just a season. She watched their oldest daughter stop asking him to come to her volleyball games because she'd grown tired of the disappointment when he inevitably didn't show. She watched their son grow quieter, more withdrawn, spending more time in his room than with the family. The distance between Ashley and Daniel grew into something that felt permanent. Conversations became transactional, logistics about schedules and bills, stripped of any real warmth or connection. Ashley grieved the marriage she used to have long before she ever considered ending it officially. By the time she finally made the appointment with a divorce attorney, she wasn't doing it out of anger. She was doing it out of exhaustion, convinced there was nothing left to save. She hadn't told Daniel yet. She'd planned to that very night, after the kids were asleep, to sit him down and explain that she'd already started the process, that she needed him to understand this wasn't a threat or an ultimatum. It was simply where they had ended up. She sat at that kitchen table with the papers spread out in front of her, working up the courage to go upstairs and start the conversation, when instead she heard him coming down. Daniel had spent that entire evening in their bedroom, unable to shake a growing, unsettled feeling that had been building in him for weeks, something he hadn't been able to name until that very night. He'd noticed Ashley's distance sharpening lately, colder than usual, and some part of him, buried under years of distraction and denial, finally recognized what was happening. He'd picked up his Bible, something he hadn't opened with any real intention in years, and sat on the edge of the bed, overwhelmed by a wave of conviction he couldn't outrun any longer. He began to pray, quietly at first, then with a desperation that surprised even himself. God, I don't even know how I got here. I don't know when I stopped being the husband and father I promised to be. I've been so focused on providing that I forgot the people I was providing for actually just wanted me. Please, Jesus, don't let it be too late. Show me what to do. Break whatever it is in me that's been keeping me distant from my own family. I don't want to lose them. Please, help me fix what I've broken, if there's still time. He says something in him cracked open in that moment, years of buried guilt and denial finally rising to the surface all at once. He came downstairs that night not knowing exactly what he was going to say, only knowing that he couldn't stay silent for one more day.
When Daniel saw the divorce papers spread across the kitchen table and Ashley's stricken, guilty expression as she quickly tried to gather them up, something broke fully open in him. He walked over, sat down across from her, and instead of anger or defensiveness, he simply said through tears, I know I did this. I know I let this happen. Please don't sign those yet. Just give me tonight to say everything I should have been saying for years." What followed was nearly 4 hours of the most honest conversation Ashley and Daniel had had in over a decade. Daniel confessed, openly and without excuses, exactly how he'd let work consume him, how fear of not providing enough had slowly turned into an excuse to disconnect from the very family he was working so hard for. He apologized for every missed game, every distracted dinner, every moment he'd chosen his phone or his laptop over his children's need for his presence. Ashley, stunned by the sudden, raw honesty she'd been longing to hear for years, found herself softening in a way she hadn't expected. Not because one conversation could undo years of hurt, but because she recognized for the first time in a long time the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago, finally present, finally fighting for their family instead of quietly retreating from it. Somewhere around 2 a.m, Daniel asked if they could pray together, something they hadn't done as a couple in years. Ashley, still holding onto her hesitation, agreed. And in that kitchen, at 2 a.m, surrounded by unsigned divorce papers, the two of them held hands and prayed together for the first time in longer than either could remember, asking God to rebuild what years of distraction and neglect had slowly worn down. Ashley says she didn't sign those papers that night, and in the months that followed, she watched something in Daniel that felt permanently different, not a temporary burst of effort that faded after a few weeks the way it might have before, but a sustained, consistent change. He left work on time. He showed up to their daughter's volleyball games. He started initiating conversations with their son instead of waiting to be approached. He suggested counseling himself this time, without Ashley having to ask. 2 years later, Ashley and Daniel are still married, and by every measure, more connected than they had been in over a decade. Their daughter, now a senior in high school, has told her mother more than once how different their home feels, how she doesn't remember the last time she felt this comfortable, simply existing in the same room as both her parents together. Ashley kept those unsigned divorce papers tucked away in a drawer, not as a threat or a reminder of anger, but as a marker of exactly how close they came to losing everything, and exactly how completely God intervened in a single night to change the trajectory of their entire family. Daniel speaks now, when he shares this story with other men, with a raw honesty that isn't always comfortable to hear. He tells them plainly that he nearly lost his family to something as ordinary and socially acceptable as working too much, and that it took a broken, desperate prayer on the edge of his bed to finally shake him awake to what mattered most. "I thought I was protecting my family by working so hard," Daniel says. "I didn't realize I was actually losing them, one distracted evening at a time. It took almost signing away my marriage for me to understand what Jesus was trying to show me all along. He didn't just save our marriage that night, he gave me back eyes to see my own family again." Maybe you're watching this today, and somewhere in your own life, distance has quietly crept into a relationship you once thought was unshakable. Maybe it's not divorce papers on your kitchen table, but you recognize the slow drift Ashley and Daniel experienced, the gradual disconnection that happens not through one dramatic betrayal, but through years of ordinary distraction, until one day you look up and realize you're living beside someone you love but barely know anymore. Their story is a powerful reminder that it is never too late for God to break through, even in what feels like the 11th hour, even when papers are already spread out on the table and hope feels nearly gone. Sometimes it takes hitting that breaking point to finally hear what He's been trying to tell us all along. If you're carrying distance in your own family tonight, don't wait for the 11th hour the way Daniel and Ashley nearly did. Bring your honest prayer to God right now, the way Daniel did on the edge of his bed, and ask Him to show you where you've drifted and give you the courage to walk back toward the people you love before the distance grows any further. And if you're the one holding the papers tonight, feeling like there's nothing left to save, consider giving God a war.